11th May 2022, 9:41 p.m. at locale. Behold the beasts for which I have turned back. Do thou protect me from her famous sage, for she doth make my veins and pulses tremble. Canto 1, verses 30, 31, stanzas 30, 31, 32, and 33. Behold the beasts for which I have turned back. Do thou protect me from her famous sage, for she doth make my veins and pulses tremble. See if behoves take another road, responded he, when he beheld me weeping. If from this savage place thou wouldest escape, because this beast, at which thou criest out, suffers not any one to pass away, but so doth harass him, and she destroys him, and has a nature so malign and ruthless, that never doth she glut her greedy will, and after food is hungrier than before. Stanza by stanza. Behold the beasts for which I have turned back. God protect me from her famous sage. It's a continuation on the Inquisition, or more directly stated, it's a more direct statement of the Inquisition suggested in Briar's stanza, and questioning and bringing to question of a direct confrontation. Direct confrontation with the manner that, with the perception of the risk to be had in contact, of the direct questioning of the selves or the appeasement's offering, or simply response to engagement with action regarding the matters of futilities and challenges, or futilities towards affordance of peace, of desirously peaceful or joyous outcome or state, as well as with notance to the significance of as well as more so with notance too, but more clearly state with reference to the aspect of a challenge and a growth and an effort toward outcome, and a venuing and the choice to make unto continuance of sacrifice. Against the more what may have been seen as, what may be perceivable as sightly option beneficent to more sightly and more oft stable path through which more quieted or peaceful joy might be offered, more quieted, more peaceful path might be offered. Behold the beast for which I have turned back. The idea of motivation or demotivation. Less to note, less of note, is primarily the existential aspect that action taken simply progresses to incremental challenge, to incremental tasking, and more so, effort placed. To be fully dedicated. The effort placed is of limited, is being of limited outcome, while simultaneously tasking of individual in a manner that can be experienced as defeating, yet still offers of the peace and idea of awareness of continued effort. Which at times can be seen as a limited or inadequate or insufficient offerings of respite on a given matter, or given usage of practice. Becomes majorly a question as to whether or not such a thing is practically actionable in mortal perspective, in mortal context, as less suggestible by the line forward. She doth make my veins pulse and tremble. Then let's move along. Thee it behoves to take another road, responded he, when he beheld me, weeping, if from savage place thou wouldest escape. Thee it behoves to take another road, responded he, when he beheld me, weeping, amid this savage place thou wouldest escape. It's a notice of it's a reiteration of the suggestibility and the offerings of and the classical offerings of guidance and understand and the nature to seek peace and contentment, restful contentment and cherishings and action in cherishings and celebratory cherishings, even in modesty, even as they may be modest, still seems as though there's calling there rather than the perpetuation of tasking. Also simultaneously appraisal of such a decision and perspective, for it is welcoming and seemingly valid with notions of the imposition of mortal finality, finiteness. Responded he when he beheld me weeping. And if from this savage place thou wouldest escape, so notions of acknowledgement of some limitedness in affordment, whilst simultaneously noting that it is validly willed, validly willed, maybe validly again also welcoming validly willed. It is a reminder to those taking path to rest and peace and contentment that actionability is always always availing towards offerance. It's also noting that the place therein, it's also more specifically iterating that the significance and great anger and magnitude of tasking of the position and the awareness of imperative or perceived obligation, or more simply the despondence and the negative and depressive effect that can be had, or the depressive state in which one may be found placed by existential diminishment, existential effect, existential experiencing, or life, or the event or circumstances of life in general. And the lonesomeness, or loving challenge. Love with challenge. And the welcomest thou, and it's welcoming to the choice to seek contentment and peace, whilst also praising those who had been able to consolidate and find peace, while simultaneously challenging onto greater enactment and service and contribution towards alleviation or furtherance of operance. in the more tumultuously tasking on those who would note capacities to have some post-subsistential respitances from the adversities of life. Because this beast at which thou criest out suffers not any one to pass her way, so doth harass him that she destroys him. Criest out is a notance of anguish, a notance of praise and appreciation for the notance of praise and appreciation for a nature in which some valuing us of effectability or effectability of action or contribution towards beneficence is availed, with a nature in which effectability of action towards contribution or beneficent purpose is availed. Yet recognizing the perpetual challenge there, and also noting the perspective that one might find a sense of directive onto peace, and may find their solace, their passion, their conviction for beneficence in encounter, which is notance of an outcry, as well as to note that the outcry, that the thing itself is of threat and demand, and offerant of understanding and forgiveness, a welcome offerant of accommodativeness to those who would be experiencing the aversion understanding, experiencing the tested understanding, or tested aspect of circumstances that would lead to one's diminishment, that may be affecting towards a diminishment or depression, that would lead one to a seeking, or lead one to a rest, or be afflicted by the restrictions more relevantly. Suffers not anyone to pass her way. Perpetuation of challenge. A notance that the use of the words to pass her way is a note that the welcome is always with through. The enactment of engagement is always with through. The conscientiousness or directive onto contribution, improvement, servicing against the restricting or the adversing, whilst simultaneously noting, whilst the styling also would suggest, also speaks in a sense of a notance of accommodation to the requitance of such, and again, such as with respected requitance of such, to note that full understanding and self-offerance within companionship, full understanding or full offerance in companionship isn't inherently offerant of a full of entirety of connection and the romantic and the companion romantic and a romantic barrier or barment or can still be affected or still be experienced despite what might be seen and experienced as a full notance as a complete designation, maximal engagement of efforted action, capacitous action on towards the idea of a pairing in such a manner. The companionship at that depth. It is noting that it could happen. It's not to say that it's not admitting that it can't be happening, but it's a note that it's a relevant note, suggested note that of the acknowledgement that despite all limit of love offered, love may not be reciprocated at the same magnitude, reciprocated in the same way at all. And but simply to note at such an experiencing of depth of connection at depth is a thing that is simultaneously actioned by parties interacting and by chance and circumstantial or almost soulful designation or interwoveness. But so doth harass him, she destroys him. speaks to the offerings. Harassment is simultaneously a noting of cause for depletion, whilst also a notance of also an offerance of hand to the perspective that one's depletion, one's hurt, and that in the romantic sense is a thing of transience. It denotes the thing of transient, an offerance of a hand unto a welcome, to hold on to what, onto aspect of self, aspect of perspective that is seen as beneficial, that is seen as good by within the observer's own. As that is as well as noting the relevant inevitability of change, a transient state, potential for change that can be experienced as tremendous, as greatly paining. But it also notes that more simply within any actionable state of challenge, persons are placed on the position of imperative to growth and development of form. And development or change in form can be to a beneficent state or an improved state, or it can be to a state with some alternations from self-placed. It's celebrants using the word celebratory in that sense for those who would have gone through adversity and experienced change of themselves, and a notance of the foregoing of past state into potentially preferable future state or grown state, developed state. It was simply a position of betterment. And an allowance for some set, an allowance to which it also simultaneously brings awareness to the transience of state and evokes awareness of past state with appreciation, the purpose of a reminder to appreciation of prior state, even in position of betterment. Also, and the use of the word doth there is somewhat of a notance of advisement to requitance unto the unassailable, unto an allowance, unto us an allowance, a self-allowance for peace, forgiveness, accommodativeness, and maybe even contentment. And has a nature so malign and ruthless, never doth she glut her greedy will, and after food is hungrier than before. An offerance of complainants alongside, a notance of empathetic, a notance and reminder of the relevance of empathy in that sense. Furtherance of the process of remindings to larger imperative, simultaneously noting through the words glut and greed of the insurmountability of some challenge, despite availability to action towards its improvement, meaning that even if you act as best as possible to contribute, you may never see fruition. Simply because demands are consistently accruing. Demands always at offerance. Further necessity always to be had. And with relevance to a birthed mortal existence. And when with words like malign, ruthless, glut and greedy will, it is simultaneously calling for appreciation, but appreciation reminded awareness that there will always be those onto whom challenge is placed by the nature itself, meaning there will always be those with regardance towards the enactment of a beneficent cause, almost forced by nature, an allowance to recognize such as an offerance of nature, an advisement to view that their being of an offerance of nature as appreciable as consolation for limitation, as consolation for the severity, consolation for magnitude or significance, and somewhat and limited capacity for actionability. On to grander imperative. It's also speaking to the individual emotive state in which one might experience, also reminding of the emotive state of drive or conviction offered, high challenge, fraying of self within rootlessness, as simultaneously forcedly acting, aggressively forcedly acting. The purpose have got to towards beneficent cause, or towards a cause alike, towards any cause applicable, or any cause self-ascribed. And a cautioning of position onto action towards too great depletion, or too great fraying rather than depletion. Too great self-destabilization or disturbance. One might then find themselves again falling within portion, as one might find themselves fallen as portent of the she-wolf's aspect of nature, perpetual demand regarding the perpetual demand for subsistence and furtherant challenge regarding guidance to higher existential perspective, or greatly affecting existential perspective. And the simultaneous regard of the nature, the nature through which that is experienced, in which persons themselves may find the actions negatively contributing to a peace offerant, negatively contributing, or And have to put this on here before. Reiteration of the confirmation confirmation and a confirmatory reminder onto the notance of she-wolf regarding the individual, regarding its more existential nature and more nature through experiencing, in which through tasking and engagement with, one may find themselves depleted, diminished, or towards causation of a furtherance of challenge or diminishment or increase in subsistential requirement onto themselves or the existence. And is simultaneously also offering momentary respite for those who would have appreciated the cause, or the nature and simplicity of the perpetuation of a viewership that the she-wolf is also an aspect of perpetuation within a society on towards beneficence, being of intrinsically impaired, intrinsically imposed upon life, sentient, existential. The recognition of that one can find peace in viewership. Some of it had been followed. Find peace in the perspective of it alone. One might also find that the challenge is at least quieting. For it is that even where it may further, even where the notance of a venue towards an appreciation for it is had, it is diminishable not to less than a state of peace in its benefit, if taken with awareness and mindedness of peace and beneficence imperative, or imperatus, or peace or beneficence imparted more, or the peace or beneficence, or the enactment of peace and beneficence through life, enacted or imparted as an offerance on doctrinal perspective. What it speaks it within naturalistic absolute, without necessity for reduction to necessity for direction to doctrinal perspective. But still notes what for interpretation it is still advisable to note that such a holdance or such embrace or such impartment onto compartment being a letting go or placing of some aspect, the burdened aspect of that perspective, onto a position of spiritual, onto a spiritualistically cast perspective. If that were to be fitting, or more offerently appeasing, more offerently respiting to the given observer. But primarily, it simply notes the appreciation and recognition, and the recognition of appreciability for such an aspect of nature as its means of peaced interpretation, or relaxed interpretation, or joyous, or happier interpretation. Stanza 30 to 33, Canto 1, Inferno.